On this episode of NESN's Patriots podcast, we break down the Patriots' 24-17 loss to the Dolphins and discuss where this team is going after starting 0-2. We also dish out blame pie for who's most at fault for the current state of the Patriots and give realistic and unrealistic trades that could fix the Patriots. Finally, we talk about Bill Belichick's job status and whether he could be on the hot seat if the Patriots lose their next two games. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the NESN Patriots podcast. I'm Dakota Randall, alongside Zach Cox. Zach, obviously, Patriots 0-2. A lot of us sort of talked ourselves into thinking maybe they could start better than this, either 1-1. I kind of thought 2-0 was on the table, but we're right back to where we were the last couple of years. Patriots 0-2. Maybe staring at 1-3 in the face for the third consecutive season. That game against the Dolphins, it was tough. It looked like they had a shot at the end, but the reality is they were playing catch up the entire night. They lost 24-17. There's a lot of ways to skin that cat. I think that's how you use that phrase. But just coming out of that game, now a couple days later, what is your overarching thought on what you watched the other night?
Well, quickly to start, basically these first two games were essentially the same game. It was the Patriots playing against a team that is widely considered a potential Super Bowl contender. Obviously, the Eagles were in the Super Bowl last year. The Dolphins are one of the best teams in the AFC, maybe the best team in the AFC right now.
Yeah, I don't think anybody would be surprised if that's your Super Bowl matchup in February.
Yeah, so on one hand, the Patriots losing one-score games to both of those teams shouldn't be a disaster scenario. I know they came in weeks 1 and 2, and no team wants to be 0-2, Patriots 0-2 for the first time since 2001. But
I think it's 0-2, losing their first two games at home for the first time since 1975. I think that's the stat. I could be wrong, but I saw that one, which is ridiculous.
I believe there's only one team, correct? I may be wrong on that as well, but there's only one team in the last 30 years that's made the playoffs after starting 0-2 at home. So it's not where you want to be from a record perspective. But if you said before the season, hey, they're going to lose to Miami and they're going to lose to the Eagles in 2 one-score games, you would probably say, yeah, okay, that's kind of expected. That's not a huge surprise. But it's just the fashion in which they lost these games. These were winnable games, both of them, for the Patriots. These are games that you could easily say the Patriots should have won, but they stuck themselves into these early deficits. They were trailing 16-0 basically right off the bat to the Eagles in Week 1. They were trailing 17-3 to the Dolphins at halftime. And it's the same story that we've been saying for, it seems like, years now. It's what we talked about on the podcast last week. This is not a team that is built to overcome deficits like that and built to kind of win anything resembling a shootout. And these games didn't even really turn into shootouts. They were both pretty reasonable level of scoring in both of these games. But it's the early mistakes that just sank them in both of these. And if we're talking about a top takeaway going forward, obviously, the Patriots need to stop these slow starts. They need to limit these turnovers, but they're not going to be able to do anything unless they fix what's going on in their offensive line. I thought that group played better than expected against the Eagles, but then got 2 starters back and actually played worse against a less talented Dolphins defense. It's really limiting what they can do on offense, and they're going to need to be able to score more than they've been scoring. I mean, the defense held 2 pretty good offenses to 25 points and 24 points. Patriots need to be able to win those games, and they're not going to be able to do it unless they fix what's going on up front.
Yeah, I agree. I think we'll really get some sort of answer this weekend on the offensive line, because I presume that Trent Brown will be back.
You never know with concussions.
You never know with concussions, but let's say he comes back this week, and then you have your 2 guards back. You have David Andrews. I feel like it makes sense to put Vidarian Lowe on the right side. I thought he was pretty good in that game. I feel like I don't know how much longer they can roll with this Calvin Anderson thing.
It's been a problem.
It's been a problem. So I'm with you. I'm very close to pressing the panic button on the offensive line, but we said before the season that once they get healthy, I think they can actually become one of, if not the best offensive lines in the conference. I still think that's in play. Let's see what happens this weekend. But I agree with you. I mean, the problem is it's the same story once again. They're kind of becoming the close but no cigar Patriots. That doesn't really roll off the tongue for a nickname. Maybe I got to find a good cigar brand. But for me, I think what's interesting is it's kind of a a blurred line on why Week 1 was a moral victory, even though I think both of us, we don't like that term, didn't want to use it, but it was a moral victory in a way for the Patriots in Week 1.
It was an encouraging loss at the very least.
It was an encouraging loss. This one, I feel like the reaction is completely different, even though, again, one-score game against a high-flying offense, a superior opponent. So why does this one feel so much worse? Is it just because it happened again? I think that's part of it. Yeah. But for me, the reason is I just think the defense looked a lot worse. For me, it was a regression to, what we've seen the last couple of years where the Patriots call the defense as if they're scared. And I get it. I would be afraid of the Dolphins offense too, but I just think this Patriots defense, they've invested more in it between, free agents, draft capital. I think they have the talent and the assets now, even though they were down 3 corners. I still think they have the players now where they don't have to play that way, that they could play more aggressive and go out there trying to make plays instead of playing scared. I mean, they came out with that three deep safety look. I just think, they sort of had that de facto prevent defense all game where they put everybody back and they didn't want to give up any big plays. And I just don't think you can play that way anymore. I mean, that worked in the mid-Tom Brady years where, on the one hand, they didn't really have the personnel on defense some of those years to play an aggressive brand of defense, but it also didn't matter because if they gave up 28 points, it didn't matter because Tom Brady was probably going to put up 40. And they also could rely on the other team where, maybe they did drive the field, but there was such incompetence with some of these divisional teams and other AFC teams that they'd usually crap themselves near the goal line. But a few things. You don't have Tom Brady more, and the other teams don't stink. So I think you have to play with more confidence and more aggressiveness on defense. And I just thought this game was a big regression back to the style of defense that I don't think is going to get them anywhere. I think they have to believe in the personnel they have and go out there and try and make a play and not play scared.
I understand that to an extent. I'll push back a little bit. You're going into this game against one of the best offenses, at least one of the best passing games in the NFL, one of the most explosive passing games in the NFL when everything's clicking for Miami. You don't have Jonathan Jones, you don't have Jack Jones, and then you lose Marcus Jones a quarter and a half into the game. You're playing most of this game with Miles Bryant as one of your outside cornerbacks. Shaun Wade's playing more than he ever has in his career. I think if this was a game to say, all right, we got to play a little bit more cautious, we don't want to put Miles Bryant on an island against Jalen Waddle, which they did once or twice, and it didn't really turn out too well for them. I think just from a personnel perspective, it made sense to take all right, let's limit big plays, let's try to keep everything in front of us. What I don't think they did well was defend some of the quick game stuff and those little motion a guy out, Tua immediately throws a wide open slant for 22 yards. They didn't execute well enough on some of those. But I think if you come into a game, you say, all right, this team's down basically 3 of its top 4 cornerbacks. You're playing against a full-strength Miami Dolphins offense, and you only allow 24 points. I think that's a reasonably good result.
30. They missed 2 field goals.
They missed 2 field goals, obviously, yeah. And you don't want to allow the big play touchdown to Raheem Mostert.
Tua had another touchdown on one of those drives when he tripped over his own feet and fell down. But I agree, points are points.
Overall,
you can play that game. You can play that game every week. I get it.
Yeah, I mean, it's not. They didn't come out in this game and get shelled and give up 45 points, which I think they could have based on the kind of some of the personnel mismatches they had. It's really helping them that Christian Gonzalez is playing as well as he is, because if he wasn't, I think that this is easily a game where they just could have gotten blown off the field by this Dolphins offense. But I don't know. It definitely was a less encouraging defensive performance, I guess, than what you saw in Week 1. But if there's a time to sort of step back a little bit and say, all right, we're not going to sort of sell out to just kind of zero blitz Tua on every play and be a little bit more cautious, I think this was a game to do it just based on where the personnel was.
Yeah, a few other quick points before we move on. I do agree with you that part of me always wants to give the defense a little bit of a break because, you hear a lot of coverage, and I do it too, where we kind of say this Patriots defense, like at the end of the day, they're not able to get off the field or make big plays against some of the better NFL offenses. But the reality is, who is? Yeah. Like maybe like the Cowboys, maybe the Jets. Not maybe, those two defenses, yes. But outside of that, like there really aren't any big, a lot of defenses in the NFL that are going out there and shutting down the Dolphins or shutting down the Bills with any sort of consistency. So it's hard for me to like totally crap on the Patriots because at the end of the day, like they are giving up 24, mid-20s to some of the better offenses.
And
that's not terrible.
Yeah, and from a big like clutch play perspective, you had a forced fumble in the fourth quarter. in week one. You had the Gonzalez interception in the fourth quarter in this game. Obviously, there were some breakdowns. I mentioned the long Raheem Mostert touchdown. But
Bees.
Oh, we got bees here.
Yeah, bees.
But this wasn't, I don't think, a situation of the Patriots defense just buckled and folded in the second half, and that really contributed to their losses. I think these have been, if you hold, what did they hold Miami or Philly to in week one? It was like 18 points for the defense because one of the touchdowns was a pick six.
Yes.
And then 24 points in the second game. Obviously, as you mentioned, you had the blocked field goal, you had the missed field goal, but those were on the longer side, set up by some good defense. I don't know. I think the defense is putting the offense still in positive positions, and the offense just is not capitalizing yet. You look at it, I think they've started 7 drives, the Patriots offense has, outside of their own 40-yard line through these 2 games, and they've scored 1 total touchdown on those drives. That's just not good enough.
Right. At the end of the day, giving up 24 points to the Dolphins should be good enough. It was good enough during the Tom Brady years. Now it's not. That's the reality of it. The question is, how much of that is Mac Jones? How much is it of everything else? The only other 2 points I'll make on the defense, the other big concern for me, we'll get to this later. I thought the defensive line for the Patriots really got pushed around this game, which is not what I was expecting. It was not good. And then one other point to push back on them not having the 3 cornerbacks. You know, obviously, if the Patriots had all 3 Jones corners in this game, they would have been better off. There's no doubt about it. But I do think part of it was it didn't really matter who was out there because Tua was getting rid of the ball in like 2 seconds or less on almost every play.
Fastest time to throw in the league.
And the Patriots weren't going to play in man even if they did have those players. So it tells me that Mike McDaniel just had full confidence in his scheme against what the Patriots were going to do. And regardless of who was in there, they were going to do these quick passes and march down the field when they really wanted to, and that's what they did.
I'm going to be honest. I gained more respect for Mike McDaniel as an NFL head coach in this game. Obviously, he took his team to the playoffs last year, certainly showed a lot of good things. But the way he was able to beat Bill Belichick and Steve Belichick and Gerard Mayo from a scheme and design standpoint on so many of these plays in this game, he was just a step or two ahead of the Patriots defense for most of this game, even though it didn't translate into a 45-point outburst or anything like that. But some of the things he was able to do with those Canadian football motions and just creating wide open receivers right off the bat for Tua, it was I don't want to say go masterclass level, but it was very impressive.
Yeah, and it was the first time we've really seen that from him against the Patriots because they won that game last year, but it was low scoring, like 2017 or something.
It was basically like one broken play by Jalen Waddle.
Yeah, that was it. And then the second game last year, Skylar Thompson played. So this is the first time I think we've really seen the Mike McDaniel thing in full effect against the Patriots. But to your point, the reality is I think Mike McDaniel outcoached Bill Belichick in this game, and Vic Fangio outcoached Bill O'Brien. And that's a tough pill to swallow, I think, if you're a Patriots fan. Moving on, I think one of the biggest stories coming out of this game was the benching of Pop Douglas. It was a benching of Demario Pop Douglas, whatever you want to call him. He had 2 catches for 19 yards in the first quarter, and then on the second catch, had a nice catch and run for a first down that would have put the Patriots in great field position. Got chased down by Bradley Chubb, fumbled the ball, and then didn't see an offensive snap the rest of the game. Did play on punt returns because Marcus Jones was out. I wrote about this yesterday why I thought it was just a bad, dated decision on a lot of levels by Bill Belichick. But Zach, did you think it was the right call? Do you look at it as this is what he's done, it's worked in the past, or do you think this was not the right time to do that?
I think it was not the right time to do it. It didn't surprise me. I think all of us in the press box, we saw Demario Douglas fumble that ball, and you say, all right, well, we're not seeing him the rest of the night. It is what Bill Belichick has always really done, going back to the Stephen Ridley days, and even with Ramondre Stevenson a couple of years ago. He fumbled in week 1, and we basically didn't see him at all until like mid-November. So it wasn't a surprise, but I don't think it was a proper use of the Patriots' resources because even on those 2 catches, Demario Douglas showed just a level of juice and explosiveness that nobody else in this Patriots offense can really match. And I think that's a bigger issue with the Patriots offense as a whole. I think the fact that one of the biggest storylines coming out of this game was why didn't they play the 6th-round rookie receiver more? I think that speaks more to the fact that you're not getting that explosiveness from players like Juju Smith-Schuster and even Kendrick Bourne, who was less effective in this game than he was in week 1. Devontae Parker had a pretty good game outside of the interception, but even he's not somebody that was kind of breaking these big plays. It was more of a possession receiver type deal. So I think that's a bigger issue for the Patriots roster as a whole. But that notwithstanding, Pop Douglas is somebody that clearly could have helped them
Yes.
in this game. He's somebody that can get open, that can make plays with the ball in his hand. We've seen it all summer. We saw it a little bit in week 1. We definitely saw it in the first quarter of this game. And it does speak to, I think, some antiquated thinking from Bill Belichick. I'm curious to see how this manifests going forward, because as I just mentioned, when this happened with Stevenson a couple years ago, he was basically exiled for a month or two.
Four out of 5 games he was inactive.
Yeah, and it is worth noting that his training camp wasn't nearly as impressive that year as
Fumbled in one of those games.
Yeah, as Douglas's was this year. And I think just overall, from hearing from Mac Jones, hearing from Bill O'Brien the other day where he said, we have a ton of confidence in Pop Douglas, we like when he's on the field, and even hearing from Douglas himself, I mean, I know a lot of people outside the media don't really care, but I was impressed with his accountability after the game. Like, we've seen a lot of players in the past make a mistake like this and then just book it out of the locker room, or say, like, basically have the PR team like need to pull him in to take 2 or 3 questions and then leave. Douglas was standing at his locker for 45 minutes after this game. He answered questions from 2 full rounds of reporters, a couple one-on-one sessions in there. He basically said, yeah, like, I made a mistake. I was looking for the end zone. I didn't realize that Bradley Chubb was coming after me. It's a lesson I needed to learn. I wish it didn't happen now, but I learned it and I'm going to be better. And just the kind of maturity and accountability that he personally showed, it makes me think that this isn't going to be a situation where he's just kind of persona non grata for 4 or 5 weeks until he re-earns the trust. At least from a Patriots perspective, you have to hope that that's the case. But I think that this is not a situation where you're going to not see Pop Douglas again until week 8.
No, I don't think so either. I'll give you my thought on that in a second. But one other thing, I was listening to the radio yesterday, everybody's favorite show, Felger and Mazz. And Greg Bedard from Boston Sports Journal was on there, and he said he talked to a Dolphins player after the game about this. He didn't name the player, but said that Dolphins player said Demario Douglas is their best player on offense, which, to your point, is also an indictment of the personnel on the offense, but also just reflective of what were they thinking. I mean, you take away the one guy who would actually look at home on the offense that is kicking your ass, right? With the speed and playmaking ability that Demario Douglas has. Is he perfect right now? No. He's had some route running issues, or at least in the first game he did. Obviously the fumble. He's small. He's rookie. All these kind of things. But you take that out of your arsenal for the game, and instead you run this 12 personnel for a bunch of the game, 2 tight ends, while you're trying to come back against the Dolphins. There was like a 3 tight end look earlier in the game too.
Yeah, basically they had almost their full first drive with the three tight ends.
Just not enough speed on the field, and I just thought it was, and for what purpose? To send the 6th-round rookie out of Liberty a message, like as if he doesn't already know not to fumble. Like, he gets it, and I don't think there are different versions of fumbling. Maybe Bill Belichick would disagree, but like, I don't think this was being too sloppy or careless. I think this was a guy trying to make a play, and the guy on the other team made a better one.
I think it was certainly being careless.
He
basically admitted that he was being careless. He was running, and he had the ball way too far out, didn't think a guy could chase him down from behind. So it was careless, but I agree with you.
It was careless, but it's the kind of careless that, like, it happens.
Yeah.
Like, it just happens. You can't bury the guy. But here's why I know that the Patriots think they did the wrong thing in that game, and that's because yesterday when we were speaking to the assistants, I asked Bill O'Brien about it, but I didn't even ask him really about the benching. I just asked kind of the point that you just made where, Ramondre Stevenson, when he came back from being inactive 3 straight games his rookie year after that first game fumble, he admitted for a couple of games he was holding on to the ball too tight and that he wasn't running. He wasn't running with the same confidence. So I was just kind of asking, how do you make sure Demario Douglas doesn't kind of have the same issue, that he comes back and plays freely? And Bill O'Brien didn't even answer that. He went straight into giving us this spin that Demario Douglas just wasn't part of the packages that they wanted to run, and the plays and the schemes and stuff that they thought were going to give them the best chance to win, which is a total load of crap. Obviously,
that's Matt Patricia saying after Super Bowl 52 that Malcolm Butler wasn't part of the packages that they wanted to run.
It's Bill O'Brien either on his own or from the request of his head coach, covering for his head coach, which to me tells me that they either know they were wrong or know that they're getting heat from it externally, maybe internally. Like that was just my interpretation of that. I'm like, they know that this was the wrong move, or else he wouldn't have come out and said that like that. So I think it was a terrible move. And the one other point I'll make about it is, the more I watch the Patriots and the way they're using the receivers and what the receivers are giving, I think they have to know how limited they are. They understand the reality of it. They're so not. They're willing to bench their most promising rookie because of a fumble. They don't have enough confidence in Kendrick Bourne to give him more than 30-40% of the snaps, whatever it is.
Yeah.
You know, he's out there running wrong routes. I think he had a bad drop in this game. I don't know if it counted as a drop, but that deep pass from Mac Jones, I thought, was a great play.
The one, yeah. He kind of like only put one hand out when he could. I thought it was a pass breakup at first, and then you're like, no, he didn't make the right play on the ball.
And we saw that
a lot of deep misses to Bourne in this game.
Yeah, and we saw that in the first game on the 3rd and 12. They're not so sold on Kayshon Boutte that they're not making him a healthy scratch. Devontae Parker, we know the issues that we've been over there, and then obviously we've talked about Juju Smith-Schuster, where they're not playing him either, and he doesn't look like he has a lot of juice, which not much has changed really over the last month and a half. Like, I think all those things they had to have known ahead of time, which brings me back to why didn't they just go out in the offseason, whether it be DeAndre Hopkins or somebody else, and get the weapon that they needed, because you're seeing it now. A lot of predictable things coming to fruition, and I think they have to understand it too, and I just think you could have alleviated a lot of this by going out and doing what we all said, which was getting Mac Jones a top weapon.
I agree. No notes. Agreed.
Okay. Yeah. It's frustrating, but again, and the problem is too, it's unlikely to look any better this weekend going up against one of the best defenses. We'll get to the Jets in a little bit. All right. I want to get to a little exercise. We're going to call it the blame pie. We're removing Bill Belichick from the equation because he is the master baker in this exercise. He is responsible for all of it because it's his team, but we can't name him. So it's going to be big slices. I don't know if that's New York style, Sicilian style, whatever pie is only 4. But we're each going to get 2 slices for the players, the positions, whoever that we think are most to blame for the current state of the Patriots in totality, not just for them losing the other night, but the fact that once again we're looking at an 0-2 team. Zach, why don't you just give me both right off both at the same time?
Cool. Well, I mentioned the offensive line off the top. I know you're going to touch on that in a second, so I'll leave the details of that to you. But one of the guys that we just mentioned, Juju Smith-Schuster, the fact that we all thought that the Patriots signed him this offseason to be an upgrade over Jacoby Myers, because it certainly seemed like that was the intention when they brought him in, both with the timing, the fact that they literally chose to sign him over re-signing Jacoby Myers. They gave him the money that they could have given to Jacoby Myers, who obviously was their number 1 receiver over the last 3 seasons, had his limitations, was not a quote-unquote true number 1, whatever you want to say, whatever you want to call that, but he was a very good player for their offense last couple of years. Juju Smith-Schuster has come in and not only not been the Patriots' number 1 receiver, he's probably their number 3 receiver
that
at this
report
point.
From Andrew Callahan, that the Patriots don't even think he's one of their top 5 pass catchers, which I think includes Ramondre Stevenson, tight ends, but regardless.
Still, major problem. This is a guy that if you signed him and he was exactly what Jacoby Myers was.
Jacoby Myers plus.
Yeah. But I'm saying if you signed him and he was exactly what Jacoby Myers was,
yeah.
You would still view that as like a mild disappointment. You're like, all right, well, you signed this guy to be an upgrade, and he's basically kind of the same thing. He's reliable. He's going to give you some good catches on 3rd down, but he's still not bringing that juice. He's not bringing that juice, and he's not even – I mean, it's clear Devontae Parker is the quote-unquote number 1 receiver on this team because he played 100% of snaps the other night.
Which I couldn't believe that he came back from missing the other game and playing 100% of the snaps. I was kind of stunned by that.
Yeah, it was certainly was not limited in any way coming back. But they gave him 100% of snaps, and then they essentially just split the other ones between Bourne and Smith-Schuster. Obviously, Demario Douglas played a little bit, but then was benched. Who knows how that all would have shaken out.
And then the 2 tight ends.
Afterwards. And then the 2 tight ends saw the field together a lot in this game. But I haven't been impressed with what I've seen so far from Juju Smith-Schuster. There's really no explosiveness. There's no you don't look at him and see anything that he kind of like really does well. He's had some good catches. He's had some good plays. He had the 3rd down conversion in week 1. He had a couple of good kind of like contested sideline catches in this last game, but I think he only has something like 50 total receiving yards through these 2 games. He clearly has not been anywhere close to the number 1 that the Patriots need. And I think that's been a big issue because, I mean, it goes to the point that we were just saying. They're lacking kind of high-end explosive playmaking ability, and the big-time signing for this group just hasn't even come close to providing that so far.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I would say, to your original point, if you just got Jacoby Myers out of Juju Smith-Schuster, let alone like the plus version that we thought we were going to get, if you were just getting Jacoby Myers, they probably beat the Eagles.
Yeah.
They might even be 2-0. And so I think he's absolutely deserves to be a piece in the blame pie.
Yeah. And Myers was a guy who was basically playing every snap for the Patriots during the years that he was here, and then for Juju to basically play like right around 50% in both of those games.
Yeah, and I just think it's also, and I know you're going to touch on Mac. You know, right now I think the receiver he trusts most is Hunter Henry.
Yep.
Like one guy he knows is going to be in the right spot that he can trust on is Hunter Henry. I don't know if he has a receiver like that right now because, again, I don't think there's a lot of trust in Kendrick Bourne. And I think he really misses having someone like Jacoby Myers where, regardless of his skill set, I think Mac Jones knew he was going to be in the right spot, would probably catch the ball, and that's huge for quarterback, and I don't think he has it right now.
Yeah, Henry has been awesome, by the way. He's been one of the most productive tight ends in the NFL through these 2 weeks. But I do need to give a portion of the blame pie to Mac Jones. I don't think it's a large portion. If we're kind of sizing out these slices, this would be like the slim one that you sometimes get in those Papagino's pizzas that comes in like 12 different slices. I think he's been pretty good.
I like those slices, first of all.
Well, they make you feel better about it. You're like, I had an extra slice, but it was only the small one.
They make you feel better in the short term, but later on, a lot of time in the lavatory at Gillette Stadium.
We haven't actually gotten any Papagino's yet this year, which is probably a good thing for all of us. But Mac Jones, I think he's been pretty good through these 2 games. I actually was pretty impressed with the way he played in a lot of different facets against Miami. I thought he was much better under pressure than he was the week before and was last season. And he made some really good throws on the move, too. But he had the mistakes early in week 1. His ball placement wasn't great. He obviously had the pick 6, and then he tried to force the ball to Devontae Parker on that interception he had in this last game. I find it hard to get on him too much for not being like perfect, not being a top 5 caliber quarterback, because I just don't think that's what he is. But he has had the ball in his hands with the chance to win the game or tie the game in both of these games. He's had multiple opportunities and has not gotten that done. And that's really kind of been the story for him throughout his career. It's what we talked about last week. You've seen very few fourth quarter comebacks. You've seen very few upset wins for this Patriots team. And you haven't seen him at all beat another team that scored more than 25 points. I think he's had a lot of opportunities to have that kind of signature game-winning drive, and it just hasn't come yet this season. Again, I think more of the blame is on the offensive line and his receivers, but you're the quarterback. It's your kind of duty at the end of the day, and I still want to see a little bit more from him.
Well, yeah, and to your point, I think Mac Jones has 3 wins, in-season wins against teams that went on to make the playoffs. I believe one of those is the Bills game with the 3 passes in the wind.
Yep.
The other is against the Dolphins last year when they had Skylar Thompson. And then the other one is against the Tennessee Titans when they had, like, all of their players missing.
Yep.
So, to your point.
They had, like, a 4th-string running back in that
game. And he went off
still
for, like,
rushed for
100-something yards. Deontay Foreman and somebody else. So, we are still looking for Mac Jones' signature win. And I don't think it's going to come this weekend because it's against Zach Wilson, right?
Yep.
Maybe in Dallas. No, I agree. And the other point I'll make is, I think some of us think that what's Mac Jones' ceiling? Top 10-ish quarterback, like more reliable version of Kirk Cousins, maybe. If you have Kirk Cousins these 2 games, again, you might be 2-0, and I don't really think much of Kirk Cousins. But to your point, like if Mac Jones would just elevate his play a little bit, I think it would make a huge difference. And right now, it hasn't happened with all the caveats that we've talked about.
Yeah.
For me, I'll go through mine really quick because I know we're pressed for time. O-line, we've talked about it a lot. I do think it's going to eventually get better, but right now it is the big Achilles heel of the team. When you're a quarterback and you don't trust the blocking and you don't trust that the receivers are going to be in the right spot or make plays, hard to succeed, and I think it kind of starts there. And the second one for me, sneaky interior defensive line. I think they were fine against the Eagles, but I think this was a big regression. They're playing they had like Daniel Aquale at nose tackle sometime in this game, which was bizarre. They've done that before. They've put Devon Godchow outside. I just think, listen, Bill Belichick last year said Devon Godchow is one of the best defensive tackles in the game. It's not true. He's not bad, but it's not true. And I think a lot of times we've seen the Patriots, these issues where they're not able to stop the run crop back up, and then everything falls apart from there. I don't think we've really seen that leap that we were expecting from Christian Barmore just yet. It's early. I just think they're limited on the defensive line. They got moved around a lot in this game, which I think was really disappointing. And, we talked about this before the season. There's not a lot of depth after they released Carl Davis. So I think that's a sneaky concern for me as interior D-line.
Yeah, I think we'd feel a little bit differently if they didn't have the Raheem Mostert touchdown in this game in the 4th quarter. But obviously that's
But they did.
But they did, yeah.
But they did, and he was getting chunks every time he got the ball.
Yeah. They had a lot of success on some of those outside zone type runs, but that Mostert one was just basically right up the middle. You saw a lot of guys get walled off and moved out of the way. So that's definitely something that they need to clean up. And then just going back one more time to the offensive line, if you look at what they had in this game, 4 of their 5 starters either did not practice at all with the team this summer or barely practiced with the team this summer. So Vidarian Lowe got there just before cutdown day. Calvin Anderson, Mike Owenu both didn't practice at all in training camp. Cole Strange got hurt right at the beginning of training camp, didn't come back until afterwards. So it's basically only David Andrews and a bunch of kind of movable pieces around him. Owenu still wasn't back to 100%. He came out late in the game. Calvin Anderson at right tackle has been pretty rough through 2 games.
As expected, but rough.
As expected. And Vidarian Lowe, as you mentioned, wasn't terrible in this first game, but he's the one who led up the sack on that final drive, sets the Patriots up in like 3rd and 18 or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's difficult to climb out of that hole.
Yeah. So, again,
got to get together, got to get reps, got to get healthy. I do think they can be okay, but they need to stop this revolving door.
Yeah. It's like we said the other day, it's constantly a fire drill on the offensive line, and that's a big issue.
Yep.
All right, moving on. Another exercise. I'm going to do trades that we could make right now that would fix the Patriots. We're just going to get 2. One, completely ridiculous, but you can squint and see it. And the other, more realistic, but both filling needs for the Patriots.
We're pressed on time here, so I'm just going to let you cook.
Okay. All right. What time do we got to get out of here? What time? Oh, yeah. I guess you're right.
We got to talk to Mr. Mac Jones in 7 minutes.
I'm sure he'll have a lot to say. All right. We'll just go through them without explanation. Yeah. Mine, number 1, Justin Jefferson. Who knows if he's going to re-sign with the Minnesota Vikings? Maybe he's one of these guys that eventually wants out. You know, Kyle Duggar, who's a free agent after this year. I think he's still the disappointing player. Him, Kendrick Bourne, 2 first-round picks. Get Justin Jefferson, given the richest contract for a receiver in NFL history. Just do it.
You going off the FanDuel Twitter account now.
That's where I am plagiarizing. That's where I saw it. That wasn't their exact trade, but that's where I got the idea.
I think there was like 3 first-round picks.
And the slightly more, that's a lot. The slightly more realistic one, again, I'm going to use Kyle Duggar and or Kendrick Bourne and go get Mike Evans. I'm not the biggest Mike Evans fan, but like 1,000 yards in each year of his career. I know the Bucs have been a surprise so far, but I don't know. I think they might want to.
They're playing some bad teams.
They're playing some bad teams. You know, maybe you give them an asset and a draft pick, and maybe you get someone like Mike Evans. Do you want to give yours real quick?
Well, I think the 2 areas that you got to look at are wide receiver and offensive tackle, depending on whether they can figure something out at right tackle. I'm looking at like veteran, long-time starters at that spot. I mean, well, we got some construction going on over here. They obviously made the 2 trades before the season, but those were for basically developmental level type guys. I look at someone like Rob Havenstein. I mean, I'm just trying to find long-time starters for bad teams. I mean, it's a trade that they would make, and people say, well, why are you trading for this guy? It's like, hey, he started 70 games over however many years. I wouldn't be surprised if that's a move that they feel like they have to make at some point during this season. And then another sort of, I don't know where it falls in the realistic realm, but I think Hunter Renfrow is eventually going to get traded by the Raiders. He only has 1 catch, I believe 1 target through 2 games this year. You can say they probably don't really need another slot-type guy. You got Demario Douglas in there. You brought in Juju to fill that role, but he's someone everybody loved for the Patriots coming out of the draft. They have the connection with Josh McDaniels out there in the Raiders. I don't know. Maybe if they view him as something of a reclamation project, maybe they take a swing on that.
I like that too. Another quick Raiders idea that definitely is unrealistic. Kendrick Bourne and a 3rd or 2nd round pick for Devontae Adams. Kendrick Bourne succeeded under Josh McDaniels. Get the Raiders out from underneath that contract. Get Mac Jones, Devontae Adams. I like it.
I think including Kendrick Bourne in any sort of Raiders-related trades is a good idea because Josh McDaniels really liked him, and he did a lot of good things in that offense.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, rapid fire, last segment. They're facing the Jets this weekend. Obviously, we know the deal there. No Aaron Rodgers, Zach Wilson. He's terrible. The defense isn't. The Patriots should win. They are the better team currently with Zach Wilson in there. They should win, but both those games last year were total rock fights. I could see this one being the same way. If they lose this game, Zach, and are 0-3, and then let's just say for the sake of argument, they go to Dallas and fall to 0-4, which I think this is absolutely on the table. Should Bill Belichick get fired? Not will he, because I don't think he will get fired in season, but should it be a real conversation if this team falls to 0-4?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I do not think that should be a conversation really until the end of the season. If they start 0-4 and then they finish 5-12 or 6-11, then I think it will be a legitimate conversation. But I think that would be too reactionary. That's my take.
I would agree, and I would say, because I still don't think he's a negative. I think you could argue his general managing, his roster building is a negative, but you axe a coach in the middle of the season because they are actively hurting the operation. Yeah. The players aren't buying in. His scheme, either on defense or on offense, is actively hurting the team, and I don't think that's what's happening here. I think this is still a talent issue for the Patriots.
I think the odds of that happening are monumentally slim.
Right, but it's going to be a conversation if it happens.
It's going to be a conversation if they lose this weekend.
I agree. So real quick, pick Patriots or Jets this weekend?
Patriots, get-right game, kind of sloppy. I'm thinking something like 26-12. It's going to be one of those weird score games, a lot of defense, probably a defensive touchdown, but I like the Patriots.
I'm going to go 17-6 Patriots, but I generally agree with your premise. But that will do it for us. Still a lot going on this week. We got practice today, practice tomorrow, practice Friday, and then Patriots in the Meadowlands to face the Jets on Sunday afternoon. You can follow me on X at Dak Randall, and you can follow Zach at Zach Cox NESN, and you can follow all of our Patriots coverage on NESN.com.